Well, first Holmes was born, then he got fat, bald, and tired. What's up, Holmes?
Hey everybody, Jonathan Holmes back again for another episode of Sup Holmes, our long, interesting, I hope, live stream talk show. I'm here with Zoe Quinn, who has beautiful blue hair. How long have you had blue hair like that? It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Is that something you've done for a long time? Have you always been a punk rock person?
Oh, no, this is natural.
You rascal. You can tell it's going to be a good show already. I just got back from E3, so I'm exhausted, but you look very well rested. And
Oh, it's all an illusion, I assure you.
Really? You didn't sleep well last night? Are you tired?
I actually just moved to San Francisco a few days ago.
Oh, wow. So
yeah. So between...
that's great.
Thanks.
Yeah, I lived in San Francisco for a while, too. I don't know if you visited there prior. You've probably been to GDC and whatnot, but it's a great town for game development. A lot of stuff going on.
That's one of the reasons I came here.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So you are a video game developer, but you've not yet hit the big time.
Correct.
You're on your way towards big time. But
Hopefully.
What got you wanting to start developing video games?
Well, as long as I can remember, I've been super into games. Actually, that's not true. I remember the moment that I got into games. I played this game called Star Control 2 on the 3DO, which was my first console. And that made me really fall in love with games as a thing. And I sort of screwed around with RPG Maker when I was a teenager, being like, I'm going to make the next Final Fantasy, except I just get lost in messing with the code and trying to break it and make the engine do stuff it didn't want to.
3DO? Wow.
Yeah, 3DO.
On one of those. They had like a Doom ripoff and Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, I think, and that was like it for that thing.
There's like Gex, and like there was like a few light gun games. Gex was amazing. Star Control 2 is like still my favorite game of all time. What else was on there? There's like some really great weird titles on there.
Huh.
I still have it, and it kind of works.
What color are the buttons on there? I'm quizzing you.
The buttons, it depends. There's the Panasonic version, and then there's like some other weird versions that don't look the same, and I had like a third-party controller, so all the buttons work great.
Dude, you nailed it. You knew. Wow. I don't believe in nerd cred measurements. I think it's kind of an EP-ness nightmare to talk to people like that. But if I did believe in it, you would have just scored 9-inch gamer cred on you. And do you have any gaming like icon heroes? Star Control 2, probably a good game. I haven't played it, but would you consider whoever created that to be someone you aspire to?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Especially considering after the 3DO stopped being relevant, which was fairly quick. They had this cult following. It was on multiple platforms, and Toys for Bob is the developer. They actually saw that they had this cult following and went, you know what, guys? Here's the source code. Make it open source, put it on anything. We thank you for loving our game so much. So for a lot of reasons, yeah, I'd love to be able to do something like that. I've also been really lucky with just the way I came into actually game making. Outside of just screwing around when I was a teenager, I went through this program called the Difference Engine Initiative that Mare Shepard and Jim Monroe, Mare Shepard being half of Metanet, the studio that produced N and N+.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. She took 6 women who had never made games before in their entire lives, and we had our first prototype at the end of the 6-week course. And from there, I sort of got adopted into the Toronto game scene by a lot of really cool people, like Miguel Sternberg, who have learned so much about level design and like telling story through gameplay and tons of stuff just by hanging out with the guy. And everybody's been really welcoming. There's like no airs of pretension. It's been pretty great.
Oh, so you kind of fell into... How did that 6-week thing work? How did you get picked for that? So you didn't quite fall into it. You were chosen?
Yeah. It was actually really cool. I had not done anything in Toronto at this point. I'm originally from New York. So this is like the first thing that I did was I heard about this info meeting for the Difference Engine Initiative. And I went, and there was this like room that was like a fairly big room, but it was packed full of women who wanted to do this. And I just thought that was like so cool because I hadn't, unfortunately, had a whole lot of nerdy friends growing up that were ladies. So I was like surrounded by a bunch of like-minded women. It was like mind-blowing. And I was talking to the girls before and after and being like, oh, what do you do? Are you here? And everyone had like degrees and all this other stuff, and I'm just like this scruffy nerd. And at the end of the info session, it was like the first time I really had confidence to do anything like this. They asked if there was any questions, so I raised my hand, and after they had said that they were sad that they could only take 6 people, so I sort of was like, well, you could start an online forum or something like that so that all the people who graduate can come back and mentor the ones that didn't get in and try to pay it forward as much as possible. And that was when they I think that's what made me stand out, maybe. It's kind of guessing, but it's actually that same spirit is where Dames Making Games came from, and so I actually managed to go on and do that.
Awesome. What? Wow, I'm so glad you're on the show. And there's you have a small bearded friend who suddenly appears near your shoulder sometimes. That's a talent too.
That's my roommate.
Oh, he's taller now. Oh, now.
Yeah. What are you? He's lurking. Okay, get out of here.
So you mentioned Dames Making Games,
Yes.
but not everyone may know what that is.
Right.
Tell us all about Dames Making Games, where it is, what it is, and what you do with it.
Okay. Dames Making Games is something I co-founded with Cecily Carver, who is another woman who went through the same program I did, the Difference Engine. And we, after we finished, wanted to still keep talking and stuff because we had just gone through this really intense program because none of us thought we could do it. I mean, and towards the end when you're really in crunch time, you bond together, and we all helped sort of push each other through, and everyone finished their game. We thought that was really cool, and we didn't want it to stop. So I started throwing together these little pub nights where we would just invite any women who are interested in any aspect of the games industry, including journalists, PR people, social games people. We'd all just have a beer and talk, and that exploded really quickly, which was amazing. So around December, and we started it in, I believe, November was when we had our first pub night. Then we had gone on to build this sort of little community, and I had noticed that I got so much out of doing that short time constraint game jam basically, and I wanted to then try and run one myself. So we were going to do a really short game jam, a weekend thing, which is pretty normal for indie devs. But then I looked at the membership and realized that most of these people had not made games before. So then I expanded into a month. We offered one class a week on one aspect of game design, like coding, design, art, all these things each week. And then I managed to finagle a local co-working space called Bento Miso, who had approached me to let us use their space to have group work days. And then I brought in other mentors from local Toronto games community who were really good at being on hand for if you're using Game Maker, we've got a Game Maker rep, and they'll come in on this day and you can work with them. So I threw that together, and we took 10 teams or individuals that had never made a game at all and tried to take the most inexperienced ones possible. And everybody had their first, everybody basically had their first prototype at the end of the month.
Oh my god! What? Oh! You're the best person in the world!
No.
You are so awesome!
I just help people remember.
Come on! You did what?
I just helped everybody did so much work and it was so cool and helped each other, and it was amazing. Everyone else
stuck
them in a room.
You didn't. Come on! Oh, you were the kind of person. Well, there was nobody like you when I was growing up, helping me to learn how to make video games and to normalize it and give me a community to do it within and bring people in to help instruct me. And this is. I mean, people are trying to do that with Full Sail and whatnot, but that's not the same as this kind of. Did you get paid for doing any of this? What?
No, I've done this entirely out of pocket.
What? Are you rich? Are you secretly rich? That's a weird question. No, you don't.
Not even.
So all of that time and energy put into that just to help people to embrace game development as something that they can achieve, as opposed to, because it's very hard. You've probably heard a lot of people talk about how when you first play video games, you can't imagine actually making it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Edmund Macmillan and I have talked a lot about that, how when he first played video games, he just assumed they came out of a factory, just someone put it out, but a human mind went into creating that, and to wrap your head around that process is not an easy thing, and wow, thank you for being you.
I would not be able to do it if someone hadn't done it for me.
Right. So they started, I'm sorry, what's the name of the N+ developer again?
MetaNet.
How do you say that?
MetaNet, M-E-T-A-N-E-T.
MetaNet, and it was Mayor Shepherd?
Yes.
Yeah, these are all people I should know about, but I don't. And say real slowly the name of that thing they did, because you said it, but I didn't catch it.
The original thing was the Difference Engine Initiative. They ran 2 incubators like that. I don't know if they're ever doing it again, but we're actually, the 4-week one that we did, we're running another one in Toronto called, okay, so I've got a terrible sense of humor. The first one was run during the month of January because I thought of wanting to use the pun Jamuary for a game jam.
It's a good sense of humor, sure, yeah.
And so I thought of another one, July, je being the French word for games. So that's what we're doing.
That works for Toronto, absolutely.
It's so cheesy.
Are January and July happening?
January already happened, and I'm really happy that all the girls are still involved with some aspect of game development. We had like a high school team that they're going to school for it now. One of the girls is actually she's in San Francisco right now. I can't wait to hook up with her. She does like a bunch of music for different games now while she's still trying to figure out what she wants to do for more development. And just things like that. It's been great to see that everybody still does it. Like, I can't believe we have this high of a retention rate. It's the best thing. Right,
so it really stuck. And it wouldn't have stuck if you didn't create an atmosphere where people could feel like it was a community thing, probably healthy competition, but at the same time, collaboration and cooperation on that. So, yeah.
We actually didn't see any kind of competition at all, which was really cool. Yeah, everyone was just really, really super psyched. And it wasn't so much competition, but you would see people be very self-effacing and be like, oh, well, this is all I've got. It's not very good. And I'd be like, no, you worked your butt off on that. And one of the things we really did try to stress was to make sure people knew that going in, they weren't going to have like a Call of Duty at the end of the month, but they really reward like the hard work and the learning and looking at it very much as a prototype and such an iterative process, because making games always is. Nothing's ever really finished.
yeah, it's true. It's true. And then you go on to the next project, and that's never finished either. So what do you think it is about? There's some unique properties going on here. There's some variables you don't always see together. You've got indie development. You've got the female gender. You've got how did this all come together? And what do you think is unique about what you were doing? It's a weird question, but I'll try to flesh it out a little bit more so it makes sense. Women, you said that you hadn't thought game development was something you could do, and coming from E3, it's depressing. There are all these stats going out there that there's a lot more female gamers than there used to be, but in terms of being in the industry, it's still feels like 90% men, and that's being generous. So.
Yeah, it's actually higher, I believe. I've seen stats that say between 5 to 9% of the game industry is female as far as like the creator side goes, and I think that also includes like PR and marketing, not necessarily strictly on the creation side.
Sure. Yeah.
So it is actually about 90 or worse.
Wow, it's terrible. Why do you think that is, and what do you think can be done to change that?
Well, it's tricky, right? It's hard when the numbers are so overwhelming for anybody new to break in, with like feeling like it's that much of a big overwhelming thing. In addition to I know I just got discouraged a lot from gamer culture in general when I was growing up, because it was like weird, a lot of the women my age I talked to about games, like their parents didn't want to buy them consoles because it just was like, whatever, you don't need that. And so it's like I feel like that's changing now, which is really cool. With things like the DS and the prevalence of mobile gaming, and how it's just gaming in general has become more of a normalized thing. But I mean, there's so many issues, and I don't have a degree in this stuff. All I know is that from working with other women and having the one-on-one experience, it's kind of difficult for a myriad of reasons. I know that there's been a bunch of events that I've been to where I felt really uncomfortable, or had somebody kind of skeeving out on me. Which whatever. It's just
you mean like gross people being gross?
Oh, not necessarily in a way that they maybe know that that's kind of crossing a line, but
yeah, that's very convenient of you. Well, like what kind of just like giving you weird back massages and?
Oh yeah, I've gotten a few weird back massages.
Really, from strangers?
Yeah, more or less. Yeah.
It makes you feel better. A woman kissed my back once.
What?
I was typing on a computer. I was working at a summer camp a few years ago, and she lifted up my shirt and just started getting in there on like my rib area. I was like, "Why would you do that?"
That is so creepy.
Yeah, her name was Kate. She's like, "I thought you'd find it erotic." I'm like, "We've never really talked before. I hate you." But I outweighed her by like at least 100 pounds. So if I were to have to get her mouth off my back, I could have removed it. Not always the same with women and men. Women tend to generally have a disadvantage size-wise. So,
well, it's not even just that. It's like there's all this pressure to not like make a scene or come off like like you're just some domineering jerk, because that's like another worry, right? You get put in sort of a weird position, and I feel like a lot of us are socialized to when something creepy starts happening, it's just like and then just try to get away, as opposed to just being like, yo, knock it off. I can't speak for everybody in my gender because that's not how anything works, but I know a lot of I've had that problem before. Like your brain shuts down.
Is it because you're not wanting to offend the creeper? Because they're like, they don't know they're a creeper. He's, like if someone's breath smells, I don't necessarily tell them because I'm like, I don't want to make them feel bad. I'll just leave my nose somewhere else. It's like a smelly breath man, kind of.
It's mostly like I want this to be over with as quickly and with as little drama as possible, so I'm just going to find a way to scoot on out of this uncomfortable situation.
Sure. Yeah,
and I'm not advocating that is the best way to do it or anything, but I understand why it happens.
Right. You can't help but be tempted for the discomfort to just kind of fizzle itself out instead of prolonging it by confronting it. That makes sense.
And I mean, like, a lot of times you're just, like, minding your own business in a totally different headspace, and then this happens, and you're just like, ugh. Not, okay, let me figure out how to deal with this now.
Do you think that happens more in game development circles than others? Because game developers have kind of a reputation for not having the best social skills overall. I'd like to think that's not true.
I don't feel that's true.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I used to be really heavily involved in the local music scene back home, and it was the same stuff. Like, we had very few female creators. Like, since I was, like, a singer and a guitar player, and it was, like, the frontman, like, it was the same stuff. It was just different, dressing, more or less.
I see. So it's anytime dudes get together, yucks are going to happen.
Well, no, it's just anytime women are discouraged from entering into a thing, I think.
Right.
Because I don't feel like it's like... I feel like the stuff is so pervasive and subconscious that it's not even something you can just, like, blame on dudes or whatever. Like, I think it's just a lot of weird societal stuff that just is running in the background, and it manifests in ways that are unfortunate.
Sure. So it's more just kind of a subconscious culture thing. Did you feel discouraged for being a female rock and roller as well?
Oh my god, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, there was one time I actually got told that I needed to get backstage because I got confused for a groupie.
Totally. I just remembered we have a chat. I've been talking to you straight for 20 minutes. So we're going to... people are hopefully watching the show somewhere, and they will come in and ask us questions as we go. But in the meantime, I want to hear about some of the games that you're working on.
Yes.
Super Street Fighter? Is that one?
Yes, Super Street Fighter is... I am so happy that I got asked to be the gameplay designer on it. More or less, the gist of it is the team's built these data capture gloves that you wear on your hands. And this isn't a video game. There's no screen. And you stand...
Well, it's kind of like Johann Sebastian Joust in that way. It's an electronic game, kind of.
Yeah, it's one of those cool things that's sort of straddling the line, and especially since it's based off of a video game. So you've got these gloves, and you can do like a Hadouken, and the data will capture and basically verify whether or not you've done it right. And then the ring of flame effects that you're standing in will react. So it's like, so you like throw a thing at your opponent, like you throw up a jab, and then the flamethrowers will go like
I think you should. I think you should back up a little bit because the listeners might not have heard before. The ring of flame effects you're standing in.
Flamethrowers, yes.
You're just in flamethrower, like a ring-shaped flamethrower, kind of.
Yeah. Well, no, it's multiple flamethrowers. You're just standing in the middle of a ring of flamethrowers.
Whoa! Where did you get the flamethrowers? They're not easy to come by. It's usually like the last item you get in Resident Evil. They're a very rare weapon. Where'd you get the flamethrowers? You built them.
Well, not me personally. I'm just the gameplay person. But yeah, the team built them. And we've got different. Like player 1 has one color of fire. Player 2 has a different color of fire. Because that's the thing you can do. Yeah, I swear.
Oh, it's so good, so awesomely good. And is it a game where one player can beat another player with fire? It's a versus game. And what color are the fires?
Green and orange, I believe, is what we're going with presently.
Sounds incredible. So is the gameplay? It's mostly a motion-controlled game, and it's a fighting game. Would you say?
Yeah, you basically mimic similar to like you can throw a Hadouken and it will do that. Like behind you, like it will react. We're also doing some cool stuff for the Ringmaster's gloves too, where the Ringmaster can do cool flame effect stuff to help make it even more of a spectacle than it already is.
Jesus Christ, that's incredible! But how do you get paid for making this? Because you can't sell these, I assume. I mean,
no.
You could, like a Wii version that would, I don't know, just have lighters or something. You'd have to make it safe somehow.
Those little cigarette things that you push in on your dashboard, just like they
yeah, that's all you can do. Is it going to be a profit deal for you, or is it just kind of a big art piece that people can appreciate in and out, but not? You can't really package that and let them take it home, I suppose.
Yeah, it is an art piece, and they'll be showing it at several festivals. We're debuting it at Burning Man this year. Because, obviously, Burning Man.
Wow, that's going to go over so well. Has it been a really expensive project to make? As the developer, hopefully you haven't had to have too much out of pocket on your own.
Well, thankfully, we're an honorarium installation at Burning Man this year. So it's like they're helping out. And there's like grant funding and stuff you can apply for that we've done. And I believe we're doing more Kickstarter-y type stuff. Because as it turns out, hauling that much fuel around is really expensive.
That's the part I wouldn't have imagined would be that expensive. Just the flamethrowers, I guessed, were going to be where a lot of the money went. Huh. Awesome. That's so exciting. Yeah,
like, you'd be surprised. It's really not... It's like with video games, right? As soon as you learn how to do it, as soon as it's made accessible to you, it's not this big mysterious thing that you can't ever make, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's not the only fire game you've got going right now.
Yeah, I had an afternoon project because I'm lucky enough that it's actually with the guy who came up with the idea for Super Street Fire. We're hanging around talking about just general construction of fire toys, and fire toys being like poi, stabs, anything you can set on fire and then do something cool with. And I was just throwing out joking things that'd be funny, like children's toys that you could convert into it, like a flaming speak and say. And then I mentioned, like, what if we did this with a skip it? Because that's basically what some of these things already are. And for some terrible reason, Seth Hardy, the person who helped me make this, was like, actually, we should do that. And so fast forward to like a few weeks later, we got some very simple parts, some of which were literally laying around the shop. The shop being Site 3, which is this amazing co-laboratory in Toronto that has like tons of machine working tools. They've got like a laser cutter, drill presses, things like that, and it's really where art and technology meet. So this sort of thing happening there is not entirely unheard of. So we just threw it together in an afternoon, and then unfortunately I got really busy and was out of the province for a month, and couldn't really do anything more with it until I came back, and then we actually finally lit it up and tested it, and nobody got set on fire even a little.
So you made a flaming skip it, which people who may not recall, you put a kind of a stick, and it's got a hoop, and you put the hoop on your ankle, and then you have to skip over the, and there's a wheel on the other end, so it can rotate around you. and it's on fire. Wow.
Yes.
Oh, you made that too. I guess we could integrate that into Super Street Fighter. That could be kind of a hurricane kick type move.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Don't take any ideas from me. Actually, I don't know what I'm talking about. I've never lit myself on fire or been around flamethrowers or anything, so I'm definitely
It's not that bad. Getting set on fire is not as big of a deal as people make it out to be.
Is that right?
Yeah.
If you're watching this at home, don't light yourself on fire.
Don't do it.
There are people who know how to do it very well, and for them, it's not that big a deal. For you, no flamethrowers at home, kids. Thanks. And so that's one of the games you're working on. And you made the Jeff Goldblum staring contest. What inspired you to make a game about Jeff Goldblum's beautiful eyes?
I think it was originally when I was in high school. I found that really old meme, the Jeff Goldblum was watching you poop meme. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I have not.
It's this really intense picture of Jeff Goldblum where he's like, his eyes are bugging out, and it's like this really big poster and it just says Jeff Goldblum is watching you poop on it. And people would put that like in the back of bathroom stalls. And the first time I saw that, I just cracked up. And what happened was for the GDC 2012 Pirate Cart, we were all trying to make as many 2-hour games as possible in this 48-hour span of time during this game jam I ran in Toronto called Spam Jam, again with terrible puns. So that was the first 2-hour game I made, because I basically had a tiny notebook full of really dumb game ideas that I could knock out in 2 hours, and I just wanted to make as many of them as possible. And Jeff Goldblum Staring Contest was the first.
Awesome. And how did it go over?
Apparently it went over fairly well. It's so silly. I spent like no time on it. It's just this huge joke, but like people get really intense about it. There was one friend I met that just was so horrified by the concept. He was actually angry with me for a little while because it randomizes the picture of Jeff Goldblum every time. And there's one that comes up less than the others that where he's like shirtless and like sort of pulling his pants down a little and covered in oil, and he's just like. And people swear that one stares for longer, but that is not something I did.
Oh, really? How interesting. It's kind of a Rorschach test.
Yeah.
You can tell how much people like the idea of a shirtless Jeff Goldblum by how long they think the staring happens for.
Yes.
And then, so he eventually blinks, right? I haven't gotten to play it myself. So it's not totally impossible to win.
Correct. It's highly randomized.
Yeah. Wow. Great idea. How many video game ideas do you have running at any given time? You had a notebook at that point.
Yeah.
Do you have a lot of ideas going most of the time?
I do. What I like to do is, and I have to set this up again since I just moved, but I like to have like 3 stacks, and I forget where I heard this. It was from another game designer forever ago. 3 stacks of ideas that every time I have a new idea, it has to be better than one of the top one on each 3 pile, and then I just put it over it. So then I just stack up ideas like that, and I keep revisiting it because like a lot of things I'll come up with will seem good at the time or seem terrible at the time, but I'll write it down anyway, sleep on it, and come back to it. And I find that gives me more clarity as to whether it's something I should actually spend any time on or not.
Sure. But at the same time, the Jeff Goldblum Staring Contest, that probably wouldn't have made it to the top of your pile if you didn't just have to rush out a 2-hour game, and there it was, a hit.
Yep.
Yeah,
it wasn't a hit. It definitely wasn't a hit.
Really? It's a hit in my mind. I hope more people play it after seeing it on Destructoid. Well, there's a lot of different things we could talk about from here. I don't know if you followed the E3 news or if you even care about that, because I don't know if you ever want to make games on that.
I kind of don't.
Game. Kind of don't. Interesting.
I mean, I do and I don't. Like, I tried to follow it, but it was exactly what I figured it would be, honestly.
Yeah.
I maybe was slightly, and I feel like so jaded for saying that because these people work so hard on these things, and I feel like a jerk for just being like, meh. But, yeah.
No, you're not alone on that. A lot of people in the industry, journalists who are supposedly bona fide mainstream video game fans, were kind of iffy about it here. Games are getting into their 4th or 5th iteration a lot of the times. Halo 4, God of War Ascension, which is technically the 4th home console God of War game. And I feel like the time is right for people such as yourself to be able to get the attention that you've deserved, because we're finally getting that exhaustion with the same old tricks to try to win over the press and the mainstream audience. The people are finally getting bored of being fed the same stuff, and I'm hoping that leads them to look for more interesting things like the stuff you make. I'm hoping so.
Yeah, I think it will. I mean, especially when you look at, some of the indie titles that have launched recently that have really done creative and beautiful things like Sword and Sorcery and Fez. It's nice though that there seems to be an expanding market for that, because honestly, like, making a game now is a bit more easy than it probably ever has been because of things like Unity and Game Maker. That you don't even necessarily really need to know how to code super well, or even originally if you're doing something really tiny in Stencil, you don't really need to know how to code at all. You just need to know basic logic. So I feel like that, combined with a lot of the general malaise towards the AAA industry and people getting sick of looking down the same gun sights at the same brown world with the same explosions and the same plots over and over, that really now is a time that we might see, or I guess a continuing of creative explosion, because honestly people have been making such cool games for so long that it's just nice that now it's finally getting some attention.
Yeah, it's true. And every once in a while there's a mainstream game like the Portal series, which it felt fresh to me anyway. It didn't start big though. It started off just a downloadable title. They didn't push it like they would have a Left 4 Dead or a Half-Life, but then after blowing up so big, it got its full retail release and was huge. I'd like to see that kind of progression happen for the Fezes and the Journeys and the Sword and Sorceries of our world. I'd like to see those games actually at retail, $60 big experiences that get the respect they deserve. Whoa, the questions just came in from the chat. Do you want to have some chat questions, Zoe?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. It'll be fun. Damien Sommer says, Zoe, how's Toronto different from San Francisco in regards to indie development? That's something you may not have a full grasp on as of yet, but speak to that if you will. That'd be interesting.
Also, hi, Damien. Damien actually made a game with me at the same Spam Jam thing that we were talking about.
Oh, that's nice.
Nice to see you.
Thanks for joining us.
San Francisco, I've only been here for a few days so far, but it's nice that I'm already sort of finding where the other indies are, and it's cool because everyone's still super welcoming, and it's just the same positive indie vibe that it seems to be just consistent in most scenes like that. I mean, I'm, again, totally new. I haven't run into any jerks or anything. It also seems to be a lot of people. Oh my god, it's crazy how many people I've even just ran into randomly in the last week that are just I was spinning fire actually at a local spin jam, which is basically a bunch of fire spinners get together, light up, listen to music, and practice. And a girl who had been spinning the very short amount of time that I run into, and she showed me some tricks. I showed her some tricks, and at the end she asked me what I do, and she's also another game developer, just randomly at this fire spinning thing. So it's really cool about how many people are here and how a lot of people are doing some really cool stuff.
So you play rock and roll guitar and sing, and spin fire,
sometimes,
and make video games.
Something like that.
What would you? What if someone? You should go to Ubisoft and just knock on the door because they don't say and be like, "I'm me. Make a game about me now.
No,
it's my life. It's for a game." Because as you've seen, game developers are still constantly trying to figure out how to make a female protagonist who is not insulting to women, but at the same time appealing to men and has aspects of their lives that will be relatable to women without exploitive. And I think they're really having a tough time with it. All they need to do is make a video game about you just doing stuff.
All they need to do is get some more female creators in on the other side, and I think that'll sort itself out.
That's a huge part of the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's the same with any artistic medium. If the pool of people's experience, because if you're creating something, it's inherently colored by whatever your experience is, regardless of genders, nationality, sexuality. All these things at some point have some background effect on what you create. So if we can just diversify the kind of people who make games, because I personally feel like games making games is just a small aspect of my feeling that everybody should make games. I want to see some really weird stuff from parts of the world, especially countries that we never see games come out of. I'd love to see some games come out of that. So if you just have a wider variety of people, then you're going to get more like just diversity in the games, spanning different topics, different subjects, different genres, and cool stuff would happen.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, mostly it's Japan, Europe, and the United States, and it's almost all guys that we get games from. That's kind of the only voices we have at this point. I think Sony Japan put out a game from India, but I never knew if they were just trolling me. It's called The Last Guy. They like had this. Do you remember that game?
Yeah, I remember that game.
They had like a dev blog, and all the guys in it were Indian, and they played like stereotypical Indian music in the background, and it made me think it was fake, but I hope it was real, because it felt Indian. I love that game a lot, actually. There's a game at E3 that's a lot like The Last Guy mixed with Pikmin and Beautiful Joe called Project P100. I don't know if you like that sort of thing. Yeah, it's neat. Now I'm just talking about games that I've played, but I want to focus more on what you're thinking. At E3, there's a lot of controversy around the Tomb Raider trailer. I don't know if you have any about that. What is it called? Crossroads, I think?
Yeah, it just seems like, I don't know. I've never really been that big into Tomb Raider, to be honest. It just, I was not impressed, but I wasn't really impressed by, well, okay, Watch Dogs looks cool. Other than that, just, meh. It's just like, it's the same stuff, different skinned slightly. That's
yeah. But they're trying so hard with Tomb Raider to take Lara Croft, who was just kind of a, kind of like the main character from Portal, just a silent protagonist who happens to be a woman. Except with Tomb Raider, I always was freaked out a little bit by just how she moans when she like gets hurt. It's like, oh, a rock. You know, like, why are you horny about a rock, lady?
That's what girls sound like all the time. I don't know what you're talking about. They also always pose so that their back is slightly breaking. That's what I do, personally.
It seems like they're trying to get rid of that with the new Tomb Raider, but they're swapping it for, like, getting stabbed and being in water and, like, almost drowning and having, like, a bearded guy try to give you a hickey. I'm not sure if that's what people want in place of their silent protagonist. I don't... I'm a little... But then other people I've talked to say they're humanizing her and making her a real person, and they're really excited to play it. One of our own editors, Holly Green, was telling me all about how excited she is for it. So maybe it'll be good. I'm sorry. Were you going to say something, or were you just doing the...
I was shrugging really hard.
Sorry to bore you with my Tomb Raider talk.
No. I just I'm curious to see what happens when the game's actually out and how much of that stuff is actually in there, and if it's the difference between humanizing a female protagonist versus just making her suffer a lot is kind of a curious thing.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if they're doing one or the other, but I mean, obviously, can't tell till the game comes out.
I wonder, the message it sends to me is it's guys making a game about a woman, and they're saying we're going to be sensitive to women and show women what their experience is like, which is the worst. It's like her life is just the worst, and I don't know if that's necessarily what women in their off time want to play in a video game. It's just a game about having a terrible life.
Well, that's not even okay. Like, the best female protagonist type person that I've seen in any media recently has been Avatar's Legend of Korra. Like, that would be what I point to if anybody wants to have a well-developed female protagonist, because she's well-developed, you can describe her, she's not just suffering, she has good points as well as bad. And, like, one big thing I noticed with it is that female protagonists always have some horrible tragedy in the past, like an extreme horrible tragedy, like their parents are always dead. Like, it's something I've noticed a lot. And she's got her parents are alive and love her, and that, like, never happens. And it's just, like, a lot of really interesting stuff's being done there. So if anybody wants to know how to write, or wants an example of doing a strong female protagonist that's empathetic and, you know, well fleshed out, I would point to Legend of Korra.
But that's not even a freaking video game. What a shame. And you're right, Samus Aran, her parents got killed by Ridley. Lara Croft, her dad is dead. Punky Brewster, she's just adopted by the dude from Police Academy. I don't know if you've ever seen Punky Brewster, but there's just a little girl walking around. He's like, "You look nice, come in," and then he just owns a kid. So weird. Yeah, troubling. Slow Holmes asks, how long do you guys think it will take for things like degrees in game development to be regular and taken seriously? or as seriously as art degrees anyway. And I have an art degree, so I know how serious that is. Not
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, like, art degrees get taken seriously?
almost. I mean, if I were to go to a party amongst people over 35 and say, "Oh, I have a degree in art," everyone will go, "Oh, so you were really rich and could waste your time doing things." But they at least say interesting things. And then when I follow that up and say, "Oh, and I just got back from E3 and was playing video games all week," then they all, "Oh, that's not interesting. That's creepy and weird." So yeah, even though art degree doesn't actually get you a job, it does get you some at least interest and monochrome of respect from growing. Yeah, but what do you think? What do you think it'll take before an art degree, a game degree is at least taken that seriously?
Well, the medium has to be taken seriously first, I feel. Because the thing with game degrees is it's the same problem with art degrees, is having that piece of paper doesn't actually make you good at it. It just means you've completed a program. It's with anything creative, it's more portfolio-based, right? It's about what you've made versus what you've studied. And I mean, the education is fantastic. Like, I'm not anti-education as a thing, but as far as like the degree side of things go, I don't know. I don't think it's ever impacted me one way or the other. If somebody's had a game development degree, I'm just curious about what they've actually made. And I've met some game development students who are in like their third year and they've never made a game before. I'm like, what? Oh, okay. That's like I want to be a rock star. So what I'm going to do instead of learning how to play the guitar is I'm going to go to school for music and then start when I'm done. It's like that feels like the wrong way to do things. And if you love something, you should just do it. I mean, school is fantastic as a supplement, but you should still be practicing the craft that you're in love with.
Yeah. If anything, I think that a lot of people I know who've gone to college for game development, it sets them on one path towards game development, and that path is that you're going to be a tiny cog in a huge wheelworks, and making a game on your own is something that you shouldn't even expect, and there's only one kind of game that's worth making, which is the huge budget, big publisher game. It often sends people in a kind of a bad direction. Whereas they could just be, and come on, with the internet, what are you going to college for? You can just type, Google should be your college. You can just learn anything you need to on there. That's my opinion. I kind of think we should be done with college anyway.
Yeah.
Bob the Cat Lol, my old friend. Hi, Bob. How are you? He's named after Bob from Animal Crossing, one of my favorite games. Asked, what would be the best advice you would give to yourself when you were just starting out? So if you could go back to little Zoe Quinn just starting out, what would you give yourself for advice?
I would say whatever your idea is, you need to cut that in half and then cut it in half and then cut it in half, because the biggest problem with, I think, and I tell this to anybody I give advice to that's starting on their first game too, is like, scope is going to be such a thing that even if somebody tells you ahead of time that you should really reduce the scope of your game, you're not going to realize that until you hit that wall and you're like, oh, I can't possibly do all these things. Or maybe it's bad design to do so. Like, if you just, oh, well, I'm going to shove a bunch of stuff. Like, the classic example is first-time game makers who are looking to make an MMO as their first game. It's like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. But start off small. Realize that it's an iterative process. Look at your prototypes as such. Don't be afraid of shelving things. Try to distill what you want to say and do into one small thing, and then make that, and then build up from that if you feel like you really have something. And if not, don't be afraid to shelve it and move on. I mean, sort of think of that as like very similar as if you're going through art school and you're doing anatomy studies, maybe take a day and try to learn how to, make a snake clone or make a Tetris clone, just figure out how to program that, what that feels like, what you can do with it, and then play around with it a bunch.
Respect just learning the tools and hold on to your ideas, but at the same time know that it's not as simple as it may look on the outset. Wow.
And most importantly, don't beat yourself up for it.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Some people I know only operate well in a competitive atmosphere with a lot of beating up either themselves or others, where other people need to be uplifted in order to even believe in themselves a little bit. I'm definitely in the second type. Wow, we've got so many questions coming in. You like questions?
I love questions.
Oh, neat. Me too. If for Dejani, sorry, I can't pronounce your talks. Are you excited about the Wii U? Will you get it? Zoe?
Nope.
Tell me more. Why won't you get it?
I don't see any real use for it yet. Like, if there's a game that actually uses the hardware in an innovative way that goes with the design and makes sense and is fun, then maybe. But in the meantime, I really just don't care. It's like, oh yeah, you can do that for the sake of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's something that can be done with the hardware that a creative designer will come up with, and I'm more interested in that than I am in just the hardware. I want to see what developers will do with it, because honestly, I'm not sure what I would do with that, and I don't feel like it just feels extremely gimmicky, and I'm just not interested.
Right on. I can tell you about it. I assume you haven't played it as of yet.
No.
I've been in E3 a couple of times. It is the married man's video game system, or woman. It is for, you're playing a video game on the couch, and then your significant other comes home, your kids come home, and they want to watch TV. Then you get to take your game off the TV and put it in your controller. That's it. And any game that doesn't utilize that feature is going to shoot themselves in the foot, because that's really the point. The point
Beware family togetherness.
That's Sinistar. Thank you for chiming in with your opinion. And like the new Batman game for it, you will suddenly have to do like a touch puzzle to open a door, and it's just like, that's not why I play a Batman game, to like rub a puzzle. That's not what Batman does, and that's not what I'm gonna do. There's a lot of developers who are already on the wrong track with it, and it's depressing. There's some cool features for it. I'd love to see Sword and Sorcery on it.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
They'll never do it, but it would be great because it's perfect. You can turn it just like you would the iPad, but play it on your HD TV, which would be nice. It's got potential, and I hope developers utilize it, but I think third parties to start off are really going to choke on it bad. They already don't get it, just like they didn't get the Wii, really. History tends to repeat itself. So, yeah, thanks for talking about something you're not interested in at all. The Wii U. What a nice guest you are. Nice Gold Hombre asks, do game companies need to bring back or bring in new mascots to put color back in games? Do you like the mascot era, the 90s? Arrow the Acrobat and Sparkster and all those guys? You miss that era of gaming?
Not particularly, personally, but I think that's just because I was always playing. I can't think of a game that I played that had that I was really into.
You mentioned Gex.
Gex was alright, but I liked it because the platforming was interesting, not because it had a salamander guy, or gecko rather. That was just that's what made sense with the mechanic. But as far as mascots go, I'm generally pretty indifferent. I do like games that have strong characterization of if they have any sort of story. I like strong characterization and feel like their own unique little feel, but as far as like straight up mascots go, I'm fairly indifferent. I more care about games being better.
Sure. So I would agree that the mascot, it's from a shallow time in terms of what you use to promote your game. Like a lot of mascot games are incredibly well made in terms of level design and whatever their particular hook is, but the mascot itself symbolize just kind of, we don't really respect talking about game design, so we'll just put basically a cereal box character on here. I hope you'll buy it because, it's a talking bird. So I'm not that, I don't mind them, and if they're well designed and they're fun, great, but that whole era, in a way it's worse to me than the kind of brown shooter era we're in terms of phoning it in with what's on the surface of your game, I think. And people, we've talked so much already, and I've barely touched upon what your favorite kind of games to make are. We've talked about Super Street Fighter. We've talked about the Jeff Goldblum staring contest. But that's not the kind of game you played growing up, and I assume that's not the kind of game you want to make the most. The thing, and I could be wrong. So what is the kind of game you're most interested in making?
I like making anything that's a little bit weird. Like right now my big project is called It's Not Okay, Cupid. Which I'm hoping to try and do some interesting things with the visual novel genre, because I feel like, I don't care about like dating sims as a thing outside of thinking they're very interesting from like a people watching and what does this say about the way that they exist. Like, what does it say about the people who play them? What does it say about the makers? What does it say about, that whole thing? Because I think it's, like, visual novels have a lot of potential, and I love seeing things like Phoenix Wright, I think, which had a lot more game elements. It wasn't just you press a button and read. Christine Love's games are also very good for that.
Sure, analog and hate story. And,
digital love story, things like that, which is cool because she's actually become a friend of mine.
Yeah, I see you guys on Twitter all the time.
Yeah, Team Cotton Candy, pink and blue hair. But it's not okay, Cupid. I'm trying to play around with that genre generally and have more, especially because it's a game about dating, and a lot of people treat dating as a game. There's all that sort of the speech surrounding it, as well as like dating sites in general. Like it started because I was going to make a quick 2-hour dating sim based on online dating, like for the same thing I made Jeff Goldblum staring contest for. But as I mentioned this on Twitter, something really interesting happened. Tons of people wanted to tell me their stories. So many people have a terrible online dating story, or at least one usually. And it just kind of spiraled out from there, and I don't know, it gave me some stories that I actually really wanted to tell about, like, trying to live in an era where we're more connected than ever. Like, we're having this conversation right now, you're on the opposite side of the country. So we're technologically more connected than we've ever been in human history, but a lot of us kind of suck at forming actual, real connections with somebody. So that's sort of what the game is about. So that's the kind of game I want to make. That uses that does something with the gameplay that's interesting narratively, and I want to tell stories, and I want to tell stories through designing interaction and world building and things like that.
So more about the game. Do you pick a main character, or do you start the game as one person regardless of what you wanted to do at the start, and then you interact with kind of a virtual dating site as the game in order to meet people? Is that correct? Okay.
You start out as you, actually, and the gameplay actually changes based on your choices, and it keeps track of, like, there's a stat for how awkward you are, there's a stat for how much of a troll you are, because if you really want to go through the game just trolling the crap out of everybody, you can do that. And the profile, you have a profile that keeps track of your stats, as it were, and has achievements on it that you've acquired through dating people and things like that. And it's a little bit over the top, to try and make some certain points.
And like you have to rewrite you have to write a script for all the different people that you'll interact with in the game. Is that right?
Yeah. The current I have one completely finalized. Well, as completely finalized as it will be in the development process. Interaction written for one of the main characters, and just in that one interaction, there's over 4,000 words.
Whoa, intense.
Yeah.
Are you going to do a Kickstarter for it or something so you can just get a profit deal going?
I'd like to, and not even for profit. I just want to finish it because I really care about it, and I just want to be able to do it and have it be good. If it's not successful, then okay, I just want it to be done and as good as I can possibly make it.
Yeah.
I'm not really looking for a profit. I just want to get to the next game.
I'd like you to make a profit. I think there's some people that should be rich, and Miguel is one of the other ones. Miguel was on the show a couple weeks ago. I'd like him to be rich. I'd like Brian Provinciano. I don't know if you've met Brian. He's a lovely man. I want him to be rich, and you're now on my rich list. I want you to be rich, too. So everyone just give her money when her do it, because I said so. I'm really interested in the resurgence of text adventures. You mentioned Phoenix Wright. That's one of my favorite series. You mentioned Christine Love's game. I think the fact that texting is now more prevalent than talking on the phone, like texting and then email and then actual, because talking to people is the easiest way to go about it, yet people prefer text at this point, which I think is really interesting. And I'm hoping that spreads into gaming as well, that people start to appreciate text-based games for what they do differently. Was that part of your decision at all? Do you do a lot of texting? Do you think that that's a preferred method of communication in some ways?
I'd take it further and say even further than texting. I like talking online generally better than calling someone on the phone, because it's easier. Like, you have a backspace button first off, which is nice. You don't really have that saying out loud. you get a little bit more time to pause and think about what you're going to say. And I think I just got, like, I grew up in a really small town in upstate New York where all of my friends when I was, like, young were just people I met on IRC and things like that. So I sort of grew up surrounded by this, and I formed, like, friendships that I still have today through interacting like that. And it removes this element of anxiety, too, which I don't know if it's just a nerd thing or what, but it's really helpful for me.
I don't think it's just a nerd thing, no. I think that I've read some studies, actually, that kids, when given the opportunity, you know, 5 or 6-year-olds, like, call your friends, they're like, nope, and just immediately text them, and they ask why, and it's exactly what you said. Oh, there's no backspace button when you're talking to someone on the phone. And of course, people up to a certain age who hate change and hate the fact that you know, it's a sign that they're getting older, don't want their kids to text instead of call. But if it makes for better interactions, I don't see an issue with it at all. It'd just be progress, which would be neat.
That's one of the things I'm trying to touch on. It's not okay, Cupid, because you have the first phase of talking to the main characters that you can actually go on dates with, so that aren't just spam. Because there is spam in the game. That you have the first phase where you start to talk to them, you IM with them, and then you ideally make this connection, then you go on a date with them in real life. And I want to play with the dichotomy with that, and how with some people can be totally different. And there's just, like, a lot to be said there, too, because it just feels like, especially, like, people in their, like, mid-30s to early 20s, it's like we sort of are the first people really interacting with this at this age, like, in a really strong sense, and using online dating, like, pretty commonly. I've noticed a lot of people, I have an OkCupid profile, and I'll find somebody I know in real life on there, and I find practically everybody I know in real life on there, but everyone's still really ashamed of it, which is very interesting. It's like, what is the proper protocol? Do you say hi? Do they just notice that you creep their profile and feel weird about it? Like, there's a lot there, and it's a very interesting thing, because it's very much with how we're starting to interact with technology on a communication level like that.
Sure. And they're ashamed, I'm guessing, because there's still this kind of stigma, like, oh, if you weren't good enough to meet someone in real life, then there must be something wrong with you to have to resort to the internet. But it's just better in a lot of ways. You're not going to get a weird kiss on your back by a stranger on OK. And then you can just, you know, forget that you ever saw it. You don't have to live with the memory of those lips on your ribs like I do. That makes me sad to think about. I met my wife online. That's something. Yeah, I don't know if you're stories. You mentioned before you take in information from people who. I met my wife on MySpace. She had a avatar of Lydia from Beetlejuice cartoon. And there wasn't, I had no romantic intention at first. I was like, oh, Beetlejuice is awesome. She's like, oh, yeah, I also like skeletons. I'm like, who would win, zombies or skeletons? And we just talked about that for months and months. Then I met her in real life, and she was like the best-looking woman I've ever met, and I freaked out and got sad and didn't know how to talk to her anymore because of being online. And somehow I got her to like me. I have no idea how I did that, to be honest. So that was one experience I had with online dating. Another story I love to tell, a woman who did show her picture, and she was like a gymnast. She was quite attractive. I went over to her house, and she had a giant bronze bust of her own ass hanging on her wall. And I didn't know what to do. And I ended up getting locked in her house, and we watched Teen Witch, and I just tried to keep her at arm's length. Because there's something about having a bronze bust of your own ass that makes me question what your priorities are. Yeah.
Is it really a bust if it's an ass?
You and your puns. Yeah, you're right. It is. It's technically a casting, I guess.
A giant bronze ass.
Yeah, she had plaster wrapped in her butt, and her butt was neat. I mean, I didn't hate her butt, but what do you? And I'm not going to get into more detail because with butts, they're connected to other things. And let's talk about something else.
Okay.
My story. Ice Cold Hombre. Oh, we already did him. Sorry, Ice Cold Hombre. I can never say your name. Ossifacrat. Ossifacrat? Is that a word? We'll go with that. Ossifacrat says, have you read or are you familiar with Rise of the Video Game Zinesters by Anna Antoly? How do you feel about video game education? Also, any tips for someone with a game idea? So we can start with Anna's work with Rise of the Video Game Zinesters. What do you think of that?
I think that book is amazing, and I really like the attitude it represents. It's very much what we're trying to do with Dames Making Games, and having sort of, instead of formal education, sort of having a grassroots game education movement, as it were. And I think it's a way better way to learn, and it's so much easier to make a game now than ever before. I mean, there's so much community support too, so you can Google to find out a ton of resources which are free and open source, and then you'll have a community that's full of people like me and Anna and everyone else that are just sitting here waiting to help, because it's great to bring more new people in.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, and it's not... I should talk to the On the Media guys, actually. You know On the Media on National Public Radio? They recently emailed me and were like, hey, you got any cool stories we can just use for video game talk? You should probably just go with that one, huh? Yeah, I'll do that. All right. Making life decisions with a stranger on a live stream talk show. Isn't this a weird life I'm having? And for someone with a game idea for Ossifactor Crap?
I would probably say download some of the free tools and just start screwing around with them. Especially, Stencil has some bugs in it because it's still super new, but Game Maker is a great first tool. You can make a lot of stuff in it. Spelunky was originally made in it. Stealth Bastard was a Game Maker game. It's really powerful. It's also cheap if you want to buy the full version. Like, the license is only like $40. And just take the default games that come with it, go through a few tutorials. Like, they'll all have like a default game you can screw around with. I would really recommend getting into it, changing like a few small things, seeing what happens, basically taking it apart and seeing how it works. And then maybe try and make a tutorial game, because they all have like, make this kind of game tutorials that if you just run through, you'll get a really good grasp of the technology and how the interface works. And then try and, again, scope, throw out most of it, just start with one idea and refine it, learn how to do it, and then build on that, I would say.
You really have to have an engineer's mind. You have to want to know how different pieces fit together, and how to prioritize certain things and deprioritize other things to make games. It seems hard. Man, how hard is it, would you say? Scale from 1 to 10.
What's 10 and what's 1?
10 is like being a brain surgeon who, like, it's like being Buckaroo Banzai. I don't know.
Yes.
10 is Buckaroo Banzai. 1 is like being Larry the Cable Guy. Just go up there and use a catchphrase and make them laugh.
It probably depends on the kind of games you want to make. You know, it's like actually putting together the technology to make it happen is the how, but I'd be more concerned with the what and the why on some level. Like the how you can always practice and you can always learn, but the what and the why is not something that would necessarily come as easy, especially knowing when an idea is good or not. So I guess the question is to make just any old game. It's probably like a 3 to 6 if you're resourceful. Being on the 3 side, 6 if you have like a hard time finding tutorials, or open source art if you can't do art. But ideally that number will get lower and lower just for starting games.
Yeah, that makes sense. Then there are those 10 games, which I'd say Sword and Sorcery is close to being a Buckaroo Banzai made game. I mean, that does so many things at once. It's really, really impressive. I still can't beat it either.
Yeah?
Yeah, I get really stuck at the end. But it doesn't matter. I told Craig Super Brothers about how I hadn't beat it, and he seemed really sad, but I was hoping he would take that as a compliment. If I can love your game that much and I still haven't even been able to get through the whole thing, it's a sign that how great it is. I'll be playing it for years, I'm sure. And if you, in the back of your mind, if you can tell me what you think the Larry the Cable Guy video games is and what the Buckaroo Banzai games is, I expect you to have an answer right away, but keep that in the back of your head and see if you think of something.
Okay.
You're very polite. That's my weird ways. Thank you. Slow Holmes asks, how do you feel about the Hitman trailer? Acceptable on a Kill Bill, over-the-top kind of vein, or unnecessary and vulgar? I don't know if you even know what he's talking about. It's Hitman Absolution of Sexy Nuns. Sexy Nuns. Yeah. They're asking you because you're not a male, I presume. I don't know. It is good for guys to get a woman's perspective on things.
Is that What's going? Oh crap! That explains so much. I've been really confused.
Yeah, just clarifying, the things going on with people.
Yeah. I don't know, and the question I never know how to answer questions like this because I don't like answering questions ever like as a female developer as much as just as a person, and I don't want to ever sound like I'm speaking for all of womankind because that doesn't really work for a number of reasons. I don't know how I feel about it. It's not something that I fully thought about. Like, I saw it, I kind of sighed a little, and then I went back to working on my game.
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine it would have a big impact on you, honestly. Not that I know you that well. From what I've gathered of talking to you so far, we talked a little about Tomb Raider before, and I would have asked you that even if you were not a woman, might I add. I'm just interested in talking about that subject, but yeah, it's just not that spectacular. Sure, they're trying to play on the whole chaste versus the whore nun thing again, which Bayonetta did. Bayonetta starts off with her dressed as a nun, and then she gets her clothes ripped off, and then shoots angels. Just doing that again. Yeah. I'm surprised that it got so much talk. I think that what I like to think is that in mass, people are finally starting to look at these big issues instead of just sigh and ignore them like they used to. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. Sighing and ignoring is great. But I'm happy that the dialogue is at least going. Yeah. And I hope it reaches people who aren't deep into game culture like we are, the kind of, I buy the big name titles and that's about it. I'm hoping these conversations are finally starting to reach that level, because if they do, it may change who buys video games and why. People might start to have a little more of a social conscience about their gaming purchases, and better games will be popular because of it. I hope so. Yeah.
I think the end thing for things like the Hitman trailer and stuff for me is it's just been like it's so common, and it's this big, huge, overwhelming thing that I don't even really get mad about it anymore, as I just get really tired. It just makes me tired.
Yeah. Trust me, I know exactly what you mean. Coming back from E3, I like some mainstream games a lot, but generally speaking, I am exhausted with things being targeted towards the gamer audience, because as time goes on, I feel less and less connected to whatever that demographic may be. Oh, but I'm not a hipster, though. I'm old and I'm tired, and I don't wear scarves. I don't know how to be hip. I'm not trying to be different. I just can't help but have this brain that I have. Hey, Ossis Frosterkrat's back with a nice question. He asked, what are your thoughts on video game maturity? It's kind of what we were talking about. I think he means me. I touched upon this on my web series. I have a web series, Zoe, called Talking to Women About Video Games. Yes. Which is like a weird parody of how video game videos are made, and also I'm secretly trying to just give women a voice in talking about video games, because that never happens, I find, unless you're, well, I'm not going to get into explaining my show. Anyway, I have a show about that, and we did an episode recently about the whole idea of some games being grown up and others not being grown up. Do you have any thoughts on that whole idea?
Well, it depends. I think a lot of the maturity issue is probably because of marketing and like maybe the creators just wanting to do certain things. I'm not sure how you would define a game for adults specifically, outside of just I don't know, because like I still enjoy like really simple platformers too, and that's not specifically made for adults, and I don't feel like they're immature. But if you're talking about like stuff that seems to be hitting hard on the frat boy thing, like there was a game recently that has that reality star with I think it's one of the Ghost Recon ones.
Oh, is that right? I know they got stars in Saints Row the Third recently.
It just seems kind of silly. Or not silly, but it's like there's a place for that stuff too. I would just like to see more diversity, and I guess that would be the more mature games, because I feel like something like Sword and Sorcery is a very mature game, but I also feel like something like Fez is a very mature game, but you don't see like really hardcore, gritty adult themes in really either one of those. They just make their point without pandering to anybody.
Sure, sure. I think it's a very personal thing, the definition of maturity. It's hard to speak for everybody. For myself, I'll see what you think of my standard. When something seems like it's trying to be grown up while still being really just about a power fantasy in some way, I tend to think of that as immature. You know, it's like, oh, we're talking about serious problems, but you still just punch dudes in the face for an hour, then it's very immature to want to seem mature. To me. I think
There's also that like whole ludonarrative dissonance thing where it's just like, oh, our game is about, you know, understanding and peace, but the gameplay itself is just shooting guys in the face. It's like,
wow. Say that smart talk again. I want to memorize that.
Ludonarrative dissonance.
What does that mean?
That is entirely Miguel Sternberg's fault for putting that in my vocabulary, by the way.
Ludonarrative dissonance?
Yes. It means like the gameplay and the narrative don't mesh. Like the verbs that you're performing in the game are not working well. At least
Uncharted is a big
pretty
one
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, like, he's a charming sitcom-y type guy, and then he just shoots dudes and steals crap after that. Yeah, good one. Thanks for that. I also think immaturity can come from, well, it's not really immaturity, it's just failing. I think a lot of games that try to be mature don't come off as mature because they are just badly crafted in terms of narrative. That's personally how I feel about Heavy Rain. But I'm really excited about his new game. I think it's called something The Beyond. Have you heard about that one?
No, I haven't actually.
It stars the woman from Hard Candy. What's her name again?
Beware, Ellen Page.
Thanks for the star. I was there with a joke or light of my smoke or my Ellen Page reference. Thank you. Stars Ellen Page, but she hangs out with a ghost. And you play as the ghost, which I thought was a really brilliant way to have it be kind of about game design too, because the ghost can possess different characters. A little bit like Ghost Trick, a really good game. But you're actually possessing whole people, and that's what you do in a video game. You kind of possess the character in the game and control them and make them do things they wouldn't normally do, all in the spirit of helping Ellen Page through the problems.
Cool.
It might actually be good.
I am cautiously optimistic.
Me too. I share your optimism. Let's talk about that again sometime. I've been talking way too much. I'm sorry. We have 18 minutes left in the show, so just warning everybody. Get your questions in. Zoe, I want to give you as much time to talk from here on out. When you like someone, you just get excited to talk, so I apologize.
Heaven forbid.
Robocop asks, sup, Zoe? Do you ever see the attitude towards women in creative industries improving? I bet you do.
Dear God, I hope so. Yes, I do. We just need more of us. That's really step one, is get more ladies and have more, you know, discourse about these things and you know, try to. The best thing too is when guys are aware of this stuff and want to be supportive. And like some of our biggest supporters as with Dames Making Games have been guys, and because like what we do too is we don't exclude men from events or anything, because we value our allies and we value having these things mesh, because we don't want to start our own like little separate, the women are here, everything else is there. We don't want to create that sort of pink ghetto. We want everybody to hang out, because everybody should hang out and make games, and it'll be great. So tough, I feel like
no, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, No, it is tough. It's been a lot of work, but the payoff is immensely satisfying when I see some of the girls I brought in to game making still around and still really happy with what they're doing. It's the best feeling in the world. Like, and I feel like that for being brought in the same way, and because it's like it changed my life. I'd been bouncing around between so many other creative pursuits, but when I finally started making games, something clicked. I'm like, this is the thing I want to do for the rest of my life.
So great. But the challenges you must have, I'd imagine there'd be some guys who want to be a part of it just to meet women. I know a lot of dudes who treat feminism in general as just like a way to try to seem like a nice guy, and then sometimes they are nice guys, but still their intent is to get a date more so than actually do anything to support someone. I know a lot of dudes like that. And then, but at the same time, just reaching out and convincing people who have never played games before and never been told that games can be for them, that they should give this a try. That must be hard too. Must be a lot of challenges to it.
There are. the reason it is still a problem today, and that there's so many tricky things, and it hasn't just been fixed already, is because it's tricky, right? Otherwise, it just wouldn't be a problem in the first place.
Sure.
So.
Absolutely. But it's in video games, the most tricky challenges are the most interesting ones. I don't play games that don't give me a challenge that's worth thinking about. So yeah, good on you for taking that on, though. A lot of people have seen it and wimped out and not even tried to fight it. So thank you. Beetlenot asks, Zoe, what are some of the upcoming games you're legitimately looking forward to, indie or not?
Oh, I don't even know. I've been in dev hell for so long. I'm really looking forward to Beyblade Pixels finally coming out because Miguel should have all of the money. And I was the lead tester on the game, actually.
You are?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. How's it going?
Oh, it's such a good game. Everybody should buy it. It's so, like, I'm not even saying that because Miguel's one of my favorite people in the world, but the game itself is great. I learned so much from testing. Yeah, there's another advice for if you want to make your first game, test other people's games. You'll learn so much.
Really?
The game's amazing. I can't wait for it to be out and to be able to, like, just cheerlead really hard for that. So I'm psyched that's coming out. I'm really looking forward to Spy Party, which is a, Tipaton.
It's Chris Hicker's game, right?
Yes, it looks amazing. I've been following the development for it as long as I've been making games, and I can't wait to actually play it. I can't wait to see what it's like. I'm really psyched, and I want Spy Party to come out.
It's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's genuine excitement. Spy Party, I have such mixed feelings about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm trying to get a handle on why that is, because I'm worried. Well, my personal barometer is I love games that are creative and interesting, but when I worry that a game is made with the intent to, like, show how different you are as opposed to actually just do something you really mean, I get worried. That's and a lot of people hate the indie scene in general because they're like, oh, those dudes don't really care about games. They just care about, like, looking cool and different and hipster. And then
I hate that. I don't think that's even remotely true. I don't know any game designer who's like that, though. Thank God. I mean, I'm not going to say that they're not out there because I don't know every single game designer in the history of ever, but I've never seen anybody remotely like that. And the concept of asymmetrical two-player games is just fascinating for me as a designer and a player. And that I think Spy Party's got probably the best way to deal with that, or that has been made or that I'm aware of. It looks really, really, really good to me. Yeah. And I can't. It reminds me of, like, secret faction games, like board games, like Werewolf and the Resistance and Shadowhunters. I love games like that, like where you can't tell what exactly is going on and who's on your side and who's not. And I wish I was good enough at game development to make an asymmetrical two-player, but maybe someday.
Yeah, sure. You got plenty of time. You don't seem old. Are you really old? Are you secretly, like, 90 years old?
Oh crap! You're on to me.
I'm sure you've got a lot of life ahead of you. I'll give it a minute. Yeah, it seems that way. That's one of the things they talked up big at the Nintendo press conference is asymmetrical gameplay, because they think the Wii U is perfect for that. And I hope that developers take them on that, because the person who has the tablet controller or the screen controller has a totally different experience than people who are the other players use the regular Wii remote. And they actually had a game that was kind of a rip-off of Spy Party. Very simple, but with a tablet controller, you walk around and steal an apple, but no one knows who is you. It's part of the new WarioWare game. You look like all the other people in the crowd, and it's hard to tell who stole the apple or not, and then the other players just have to guess who the thief is. So they're trying that sort of thing. Chris Hecker, of course, didn't like the Wii very much, so I'm not sure if he'll put Spy Party on the Wii U, but I think it would really work on there. Talk. I said I wouldn't talk, but then I did. Slow Holmes again, with a question that will never be answered, he says.
Whoa, that sounds dramatic.
Yeah,
question that will never be answered.
I think you can answer this one. With the increasing removal of gender roles, gender result in the end of gender issues in popular media. What? The removal of gender roles?
Is that a thing that's happening ever?
I I guess it's they're not as strictly defined as they used to be, as they were in the 50s, where the mom always wore a dress and took care of the kids, and the dad had a pipe and wore a suit all the time. But it's far from being totally gone. As long as reproductive instinct is going to be such a prominent part of why we make decisions, we're going to try to fit into roles that will attract the opposite sex, and then we're going to end up in gender roles. Unfortunately, it kind of sucks.
And I would say, I'd take it a step further and say, like, you know, it's not even just a reproduction thing so much as there's a nasty little thing that seems to happen a lot with just people in general is that person is different from me, so I'm going to be a jerk. And anything with outward physical variance, like whether it's race or gender or, you know, size, anything, there's going to be tension just because we have some nasty little bits of monkey brain human nature stuff left. Which is fine because it means it's that much more meaningful and beautiful when we overcome that.
Whoa, dude. Awesome strengths perspective on that. That's like how vampires feel. I'm not going to explain that. Gazookalik asks, this may seem like an odd question from Gazookalik, but here goes. What is your opinion of the movie Grandma's Boy and how it portrays game development? That's an awesome question.
Yes, it is.
When people say the word Grandma's Boy, I immediately get nauseous. I feel like I'm going to throw up. Just all you have to do, like, if I had to play an actor who had to throw up in a scene and they didn't have fake vomit, they would just be like, Grandma's Boy, and it's like, ugh, it disgusts me. But that's just me being opinionated. What do you think of Grandma's Boy, Zoe?
Grandma's Boy is to game development as Hackers is to computers.
Whoa! That's a Stone Cold diss. Hackers with Angelina Jolie was in that, right?
Oh yeah, she hacked the planet. Because if you mess with the best, you die like the rest. It happens.
It's like you have a healthy sense of humor about Grandma's Boy. More so than I have. That movie just makes me sad.
I didn't pay to see it, so that might be part of the reason. I feel like if I paid to see it, I'd be a lot more upset about pretty much everything.
I don't know why it made me so upset, Grandma's Boy. That's probably why. I think that I have... Maybe it's because I'm old, but I've got a long-seated vested interest in both people who play video games and people who make video games looking good in the media for a change. I've wanted that to happen for so long, and it's just still such a rare thing that they're not painted as, you know, slackers or as stunted maturity or blah, blah, blah. It's still a long way to go. Indie Game the movie hopefully is going to help change that. It's the other thing I was going to talk to on the media people about. It's maybe Indie Game the movie, but I'll start with the Zinesters because Anna needs more press. Yes. If you ask me, she should be more famous too. But what do you have any opinion about how game developers are shown in the media and how that affected you in terms of your thought of ever becoming one?
Well, yeah, they're always portrayed as dudes.
And not always the coolest of dudes either. Yeah,
it's like I think my biggest barrier to entry with game design is thinking that I can do it as a one-person thing. The being discouraged from tech thing was its whole separate thing, but thankfully, I think one of the reasons I turned out to be the kind of sort of offbeat person I am is I got a copy of this thing called the Anarchist Cookbook when I was 8 on a floppy disk. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I've heard of it, yeah, I've never read it. Awesome.
So I started fooling around with tech a little bit at an early age, but like the cultural perceptions have been kind of, I hate it when people think my job is to sit around and play video games all day because I'm just like, no, I literally have months where I will wake up, roll over to my laptop, work on my game, realize it's like 10 hours later, decide I should probably eat, then forget to eat, work on my game, and fall asleep. Like, it's not like this. You don't just get to sit around and play video games all the time. I actually play so much less games than I did before. So that's the part that really frustrates me. I guess it's weird because I feel like the stereotypical game designer gamer image already doesn't, like, it feels like that whole thing is so different from me. It doesn't apply to me, just if nothing else, because I'm a chick. Because it's like, oh, you do video games? That's so weird and foreign, and I don't know how to deal with you. And it's just like, okay, whatever. not a big deal.
I wish people would just deal with you. I wish they'd just be like, whoa, it's so awesome that you're not just doing what everyone else is doing and you're clearly doing it because you really mean it. I think that's something everyone's looking for is like, can we find someone who actually means what they say and is doing things genuinely as opposed to doing it because they think it's going to get them rich or get them what they want in some other way? I think people should treat you with more respect.
No, people treat me with plenty. Yeah.
All right, good. They better get all obsessive and angry if they don't. It's probably have to be our last question, and then I'm going to just let you talk about anything that we might have missed. If there's anything in particular that you wanted to touch on that we didn't get to. Luis Hernandez 99 asks, do you feel like a mature grasp of human sexuality is something that can be appropriately handled in video games?
Yes. I don't think it is. Or I don't think it has been very often. I think the closest we've probably gotten is Silent Hill 2 did it in a way that was not cartoonish and stupid and actually explored some interesting stuff.
You mean with the pyramid head? Just
well,
in general?
A lot of it, like so much of it, like had that sort of thing going on in it in ways that were nuanced and not just this, like I feel like sex in games tends to just be like, you get to do a thing. And not like, it doesn't say anything, it's just like a guy slipping on a banana peel. I'm actually like hoping to try and touch on that a little in Sound OK Cupid, and in sort of a comedic way that isn't slapstick, because the whole thing is sort of a satire comedy. Like I'm using comedy to set the bar here, so when I actually do have something to say, like it's impactful.
Sure.
And I feel like sex is a good topic for that, so make it so that you can have sex in the game, not like make it very obvious or anything, like it just like a cutaway thing with like if your awkward stat's really high, maybe it's just terrible the entire time. And like you leave with massive issues and hang-ups. But like just anything, even that is in a more explicit way than I think. Because we've got so much of the Thanatos and so little of the Eros in the modern game industry. It's all violence and not as much actual sex as far as it is just like ogling things or like hoo you get to have sex and that's hilarious. So I think it can be
grasping your Thanatos Eros line. Wow. Good talk today. Did you like do a practice talk or you just always talk like this?
I always talk like this.
Wow, you're good at talking, Zoe Quinn. Being a talker. Wow, that was fantastic. Yeah, it is partially, I think, because of who's making the games and who they're making them for. Like you said, it's a Thanatos genre. It's a Thanatos medium right now. And to get to the Eros side of the medium is not easy.
And there's so many other sides that can be explored, too. There's so much range of emotion and feelings that games can explore as a medium that haven't been touched on as much, at least in AAA. There's plenty of indies doing really cool stuff, though, thankfully. And I'm so, to reiterate when you had asked me how I felt about EA, or not EA, E3, too many E's.
Sure.
How I feel is very happy that I'm an indie and very proud of my peers who are doing really amazing work.
Yeah. And there was an Indiecade section of E3, but it was off to the side near the cafeteria, and there wasn't, unfortunately, a ton of new games there, so it didn't get the coverage it deserved. But I'd like to think that with PAX growing, and hopefully people will do their own shows like PAX, but even better than the PAX people are doing it, that will really be the showcase for indie going forward. That's where I met Miguel, was at PAX East. I met so many great developers there. I met Craig from Super Brothers. I met the developers of Super Time Force, which is a smart, cute little game. I met Camille from Arkido. I don't know if you're familiar with Arkido, French developers.
No, actually.
Yeah, I think you'd like them. There's a lot of people. Hopefully we'll all hang out at GDC one of these days, and I can introduce
I live here now.
Yeah, perfect, dude. Yeah, I can introduce you to them. You introduce them to me. Oh crap, we got 1 minute left.
Oh crap!
Anything you want to say before we sign off on this show?
Make games. Make all of the games all the time. If you don't think you can do it, that means that you absolutely should, just to prove it to yourself, if nothing else, and try something new. We have a guide on how to make your first game up at gamesmakinggames.com. It's open source, available for anyone to use, and I'm constantly updating it with new resources. So if you want to make a game, go there now, check it out. It'll be awesome, and hopefully I make a game that doesn't suck, and we'll be back and talking to more people to make more games.
Absolutely, yeah. You can come back and talk on my show all the time. You can guest host it. One of these days I might have the clue. You can just have your friends on and do a live stream. It'll be Sup Zoe. Be a great show.
Zoe Quinn's indie pile.
Yeah, I'd watch that. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I really do appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. You didn't know me that well. I didn't know you. You took a chance on being on my show. I didn't fail you in any way. I don't know what I'm doing.
It's been fun.
Start talking. Thanks, Zoe. Appreciate it.
Well, first Holmes was born, then he got fat, bald, and tired. Well, first Holmes was born, then he got fat, bald, and